Right now, you're not welcome here every day. We're going to limit visits to every other Sunday, when Chris and I are both home. Stephanie's words struck my chest like a cold fist. I stood there, frozen in the kitchen. The very kitchen where I'd made breakfast for my grandkids countless times. The sweet scent of the carrot cake I'd just started baking still clung to the air. Chloe had run off to play, utterly oblivious that her grandma had just been... What? Dismissed? My daughter-in-law wouldn't meet my gaze, nervously fiddling with her wedding ring. My legs gave out and I had to brace myself against the kitchen counter. Every other week? Was all I could manage, my voice a strained whisper. It's better this way, Mom. Ashley has a system. The kids need routine. You confuse them. Confuse them? Me, who'd kissed away every scraped knee, who knew every fleeting expression, every tiny preference. Me, who knew exactly how Noah liked his toast crusts trimmed, and how Chloe needed the hall light left on to fall asleep. I swallowed hard, the knot in my throat tightening to a choke. I grabbed my purse, which hung on a chair, and walked toward the door. I couldn't face the children, not without completely falling apart. Mom, you don't have to leave like this, Stephanie offered, but her voice was hollow, without an ounce of conviction. Next Sunday, then? I asked, not turning around. 2 weeks from now. We have a birthday party next Sunday. 2 weeks. 14 days without seeing the little faces that lit up my entire world. I nodded, a silent surrender, and left, closing the door softly behind me, just like I always did, careful not to wake the children from their nap. You must be wondering how we got to this point. How a grandma who dedicated years of her life to her grandkids could suddenly become such a liability. Honestly, I've asked myself the same question every single day since that afternoon. Everything started to shift about 6 months ago, when Stephanie landed her promotion at the hospital. I still remember the dinner we hosted to celebrate. I'd prepared that lasagna, the one she'd adored since childhood. Nursing supervisor. Chris raised his glass, beaming with paternal pride. To Mom's new daytime schedule. The kids clapped, not quite grasping the significance, but I did. It meant Stephanie wouldn't be working so many night shifts. It meant she'd be home more often. Deep down, I should have seen the other implication. They wouldn't need me as much. The following week, when I arrived to pick up the children from school, just as I did every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I found a young woman waiting at the gate. You must be Barbara, she smiled, extending a hand. I'm Ashley, the new nanny. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Stephanie hadn't said a word about any nanny. Nanny? But I always pick up the kids. Oh, Stephanie hired me for the weekdays. She said you deserve to rest a little. Rest? At 67, my grandkids were precisely what kept me vibrant, what gave purpose to my days ever since Arthur, my husband, had passed. That night, I called Stephanie. I thought you'd be pleased, Mom, she said. Her voice rushed, as if multitasking while we spoke. You're always going on about your backaches after spending the day with them. I don't complain, I just comment. It's normal to have aches at my age, but that's never once stopped me from caring for them. Ashley's wonderful. She has a first aid certificate, speaks English with them. You can visit whenever you like, of course. Visit? The word reverberated in my head. I, who practically had my own room in that house, was now a visitor. Over the next few months, I tried to adjust. I went less often, called before showing up, tried not to interfere when Ashley was present. But it was agonizing to watch someone do everything differently. everything I'd done for years. One afternoon, I arrived to find Noah in tears because he wouldn't eat his broccoli. "Grandma, can you make the airplane spoon?" he pleaded, running to me. Before I could even open my mouth, Ashley cut in. "Noah, Grandma isn't going to make the airplane spoon because you're a big boy now, and you need to eat your vegetables yourself. Remember our agreement?" I looked at her, taken aback by the sharp interruption. Stephanie, who was in the living room, came into the kitchen. "Mom, we're trying to get him to eat on his own. If you do the airplane spoon, he'll always expect it. But he always ate that way with me. That's the problem." Stephanie sighed, a weary note in her voice. "You created habits we're now struggling to change." That was the first time I felt the crushing weight of the word problem used in connection with me, with my way of loving. The small criticisms accumulated, the way I brushed Chloe's hair. "Too tight, Mom. She complains of headaches later. How I let Noah play at the playground. He needs to learn to defend himself. You hover too much. Even the stories I told. Those old stories scare them, Mom." Each comment was a tiny cut. Individually, none were deep enough to make me bleed. But together, day after day, they opened a wound that refused to heal. One Sunday afternoon, about 2 months ago, Stephanie called, asking if I could watch the kids because Ashley had bailed last minute. "Of course I'll stay," I replied, a rush of excitement at the unexpected opportunity. When I arrived, I found a detailed list taped to the fridge. Schedules, permitted activities, allowed and forbidden foods, as if I were a stranger who'd never cared for those children before. "Mom, it's just to keep their routine," Stephanie explained, grabbing her purse to leave. "Chloe can't watch more than an hour of TV, and Noah needs to do his homework before playing." I nodded, swallowing my pride. When they left, Chloe ran to me. "Grandma, can we make that chocolate cake we always make?" I glanced at the list. Afternoon snacks, fruit or plain yogurt. "Not today, honey. Your mom left a list of what we can eat." "But Mommy's not here," she argued with that perfectly simple child's logic. For a moment, I almost gave in. But then I remembered all the comments, all the criticisms. I didn't want to give Stephanie any more reason to think I didn't respect her rules. "Let's eat an apple. How about that? I can cut it into heart shapes, just like you like." The afternoon passed smoothly. Every rule followed to the letter. When Stephanie and Chris returned, it felt like I'd passed some kind of test. "Thanks, Mom. Were the kids well behaved?" "Perfectly. We followed your list." She seemed surprised but satisfied. "Great. Maybe we can do this more often then." That maybe gave me a flicker of hope. I thought I'd finally found the balance, a way to be a grandmother without overstepping. But I was wrong. The very next week, I was invited to Chloe's friend's birthday party. Stephanie called me the day before. "Mom, about the party tomorrow. I think it's better if just Chris and I go." "Why?" "Chloe specially invited me." "It's just, well, at the last party, you seemed really anxious, controlling everything she ate, who she played with." "I was just looking out for her." "I know, Mom, but you have your way, and we have ours." And the other moms stare. The other moms. Suddenly I understood. It wasn't just about rules or routines. It was about image, about what others would think of super mom Stephanie with her old-fashioned mother interfering. "All right," I replied, my heart heavy with a newfound ache. "I understand." But I didn't. Not really. And then, we arrived at that fateful afternoon last week, the carrot cake I never got to finish, the conversation that changed everything. After I left Stephanie's house, I wandered aimlessly through the neighborhood streets. I couldn't bear to go back to my empty apartment, where every corner held a memory of my grandkids. The spare room with toys stored away for when they slept over. The crayon drawings taped to the fridge, the photos everywhere. I ended up at the playground where I used to take Noah and Chloe. I sat on a bench, watching other grandmothers with their grandkids. Did they also live in fear of doing something wrong, of loving too much, of caring in the old-fashioned way? An older woman sat down beside me, her little grandson playing on the slide. "Where's yours?" she asked, smiling kindly. My grandkids are with the nanny today," I replied, unable to speak the truth. "Oh, these modern nannies," she commented with a knowing look. "My daughter hired one too. They say they know more than us, don't they? With all their courses and techniques." I nodded, feeling an instant connection with this stranger. "How do you deal with it?" I asked, almost a whisper. She shrugged. "I learned to stay in my lane. When I'm with my grandson, I follow my daughter's rules. When he comes to my house, I follow mine. It's a tough balancing act. And what if they limit your visits?" She looked at me, understanding shining in her eyes. It happened. I spent 2 months seeing my grandson only once a month. That's when I realized I needed to find something else in life. "Like what?" I started painting again. It was my hobby before the grandkids were born. Now I have a group of friends. We do small exhibitions. We travel to paint landscapes. Painting. The word stirred something dormant within me. Before dedicating myself entirely to my grandkids, I used to take Tuesday afternoon painting classes. I'd completely forgotten about it. When I finally got back home that day, the first thing I did was search for my old painting supplies. I found them at the back of the closet, covered in dust. The paints were dried hard, the brushes stiff, just like I felt myself. I sank into my armchair in the living room and picked up the phone. 3 missed calls from Stephanie. I didn't call back. Instead, I called my friend Brenda. "Barbara, what a surprise. I was just thinking about you." "Brenda, that painting class you invited me to, is it still happening?" "Yes, every Thursday. Are you finally going to join us?" I hesitated for a second. Thursdays used to be the days I'd make dinner for Stephanie and her family, though that had happened less and less recently. "I will. Sign me up." After hanging up, I stared at the photos of my grandkids on the shelf. Noah's gap-toothed grin, the braids in Chloe's hair I'd painstakingly done myself. I felt the tears welling up again, but this time, there was something different about them. It wasn't just sadness. It was also a kind of liberation. The phone rang again. It was Stephanie. "Mom, are you okay? I was worried." "I am," I replied, with a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. I just needed some time to think. "Look, about today. Maybe I was too harsh. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know, honey." "So, the Sunday after next, you're coming, right? The kids will miss you." I closed my eyes, imagining 2 weeks without seeing my grandkids, without hearing Noah's booming laughs, without feeling Chloe's tight, desperate hugs. "I'll be there," I replied. When I hung up, I looked around my apartment. So many years dedicated exclusively to family, first raising Stephanie, then helping with the grandkids. Who was I besides a mother and grandmother? I went into the room I kept for the grandkids and started reorganizing the space. I wasn't going to get rid of their toys or their little beds, but there would also be room for an easel, for new paints, for blank canvases waiting for colors. Last night, I sat down to dinner alone, as I've been doing since Arthur passed. But instead of turning on the television to fill the silence, I put on music I used to love listening to before life got so full of responsibilities. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I never did when I could be called at any moment to watch the grandkids. I grabbed a notepad and started making a list. Not groceries or errands for others, but things I wanted to do for myself. Painting classes. Maybe that B&B getaway in Vermont Brenda always mentions. Who knows? Maybe even restart the ballroom dancing classes I abandoned when Arthur got sick. This morning I woke up to the phone ringing. It was Chloe, using her mom's cell. "Grandma, I miss you. When are you coming?" My heart squeezed. "Soon, my love. Grandma has an appointment now, but I'll be there to give you a big hug soon." "What appointment, Grandma?" I smiled even though she couldn't see it. "I'm gonna learn to paint. Maybe I'll do a portrait of you?" She giggled. "I want one with unicorns." I promised I'd try, and when I hung up, I realized I was smiling. The pain was still there, of course, the feeling of rejection, of being cast aside after so much sacrifice. But there was also something new blossoming, a tiny seed of possibilities. Now I'm here, getting ready for my first painting class in years. I chose a blue blouse Stephanie always says brings out my eyes. I carefully brushed my hair, applied a subtle lipstick. In the mirror, I saw a 67-year-old woman who still had so much to offer. Not just to her family, but to herself. A woman who was hurt, yes, but who wouldn't let herself be defined only by that pain. When the permitted visit Sunday arrives, I'll be there, with a homemade coffee cake and gifts for my grandkids. I'll hug them with all the fierce love I've always had. I'll smile at my daughter, even if it still hurts. But something has changed inside me. I learned the hard way that love shouldn't diminish us, that I can be a grandmother without ceasing to be Barbara. And maybe, just maybe, when Stephanie sees me arriving with an easel under my arm and paint on my nails, she'll understand that her mother has finally found a new path. Look, Mom, I think it's better if we're direct. For now, you're not welcome here every day. Let's arrange bi-weekly visits, on Sundays, when Chris and I are home. I felt like I'd been slapped. After years of waking up in the middle of the night for fevers, of preparing special meals, of canceling my water aerobics classes to pick them up from school. I wasn't welcome anymore. I went home that day with a crushing weight in my chest I'd never felt before. I spent the week staring at the phone, waiting for a call that never came. I looked at photo albums, at the drawings they'd given me, the little gifts they'd made at school. Yesterday, I finally made a decision. I called my friend Brenda and accepted the invitation to the painting class she'd been insisting on. I cleared out that room that used to hold the grandkids' toys for when they visited. I put an easel in there. I won't beg to see my grandkids. I won't diminish myself. When the permitted visit Sunday arrives, I'll be there, head held high. I'll bring a cake. I'll hug my grandkids. I'll smile at my daughter. But something has irrevocably changed inside me. I learned that love shouldn't diminish us, that I can be a grandmother without ceasing to be Barbara, that maybe my daughter needs this space, and perhaps I need mine too. The pain is still here, but now when I look out my living room window and see the sunset, I think maybe it's time to paint new horizons for myself. 2 weeks passed like an eternity. Every morning I woke up and looked at the calendar on the kitchen wall, where I'd circled the permitted visit Sunday in red. I tried to occupy myself with painting classes, with cleaning the house, with anything that kept my mind from dwelling on the absence of my grandkids. But it was like trying not to think of a pink elephant. The more I tried to push the thoughts away, the more they invaded me. On the Thursday before the big Sunday, I took my first painting to class. It was a clumsy attempt to portray my window garden, with colors too strong and proportions askew. Brenda looked at it with that gentle smile only decades-long friends can give. It's expressive, Barbara. We laughed together. After class, we had coffee at the local cafe. That's when I finally poured out the whole story, tears silently streaming down my face as I stirred the sugar I didn't need into my cup. You know what hurts the most, Brenda? Is that I don't know what I did wrong. I always thought I was helping. Brenda covered my hand with hers, wrinkled like mine, time-stained like mine. Maybe it's not about right or wrong, Barbara. Young people today have different ideas about raising kids. My daughter keeps telling me I'm old-fashioned too. But why didn't they talk to me before? Why did they let it get to this point? She sighed, her eyes reflecting a profound understanding that only comes with age. Because it's easier to push away than to confront. Stephanie was probably feeling guilty for depending on you so much, and now that she doesn't need you as much, she doesn't know how to handle it. Those words clung to me all the way home. Guilt. Could my daughter have felt indebted to me? Could it be that every time I showed up at her door, she saw not just her mother, but a stark reminder of her own limitations as a mom? On Sunday morning, I woke up before the alarm. I'd slept poorly, haunted by dreams of closed doors and children's voices calling me from the other side. I got up and went straight to the kitchen. I had decided to make a coffee cake with a streusel topping, Chris's favorite, a gesture of peace. As I mixed the ingredients, my mind wandered to a memory from almost 6 years ago. I snapped back to the present with the smell of the cake starting to burn. I rushed to pull it out of the oven, saving it just in time. While it cooled, I got ready. I chose a light blue dress Stephanie had given me last Christmas, swept my hair into a simple bun, and applied a subtle lipstick. I wanted to look nice, but not like I was trying too hard to impress. Before leaving, I looked at the easel in the room that used to be just for toys. I had started a new canvas, an attempt to paint Noah and Chloe's faces from a photo. It was still in the early stages, just pencil sketches, but I could already recognize their budding smiles. The drive to Stephanie's apartment never felt so long. On the bus, I held the cake carefully on my lap, watching the city pass by the window. I thought of all the times I'd made this same journey, eager to see my grandkids, never imagining that one day I'd need permission to visit them. When I rang the doorbell, Chris answered. His smile seemed genuine, but there was a flicker of caution in his eyes. Barbara, so good to see you. Is that coffee cake? My favorite. I handed him the cake and stepped inside, feeling strangely like a formal guest in a place that was once almost my second home. The living room was impeccably tidy. Ashley's work, I imagined. Grandma! Noah came tearing from the bedroom, throwing himself into my arms with such force, I almost stumbled backward. Close behind, Chloe appeared, more reserved, but with eyes shining bright. Did you bring your painting stuff? I want to see your paintings, she asked, tugging my hand. I smiled, surprised. How do you know I'm painting? Mommy told me. She said you're taking classes and that you're going to paint a unicorn picture for me. I looked towards the kitchen, where Stephanie was standing, observing the scene. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, turning back to the sink. The children dragged me to their room, eager to show me new toys, their latest drawings, and school achievements. Noah wouldn't stop talking about his new soccer game, while Chloe wanted to show me the ballet steps she'd learned. It was as if the 2 weeks had been 2 years. They had so much to tell. In a quiet moment, when Noah left to grab something from another room, Chloe approached me and whispered, "Grandma, why don't you come see us every day anymore?" The question caught me completely off guard. What could I say? How could I explain something I didn't even fully grasp myself? "Well, sweetie, sometimes grown-ups need a little space. Your mom and dad are doing a great job taking care of you, and Grandma's just been busy doing some new things." Like painting? Yes, like painting. She seemed to ponder for a moment, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. "But you're still our grandma, right? Forever?" I felt a lump form in my throat, thick and painful. "Forever and ever, my love. Nothing will ever change that." She smiled, satisfied, and went back to showing me her drawings. But that innocent question kept echoing in my mind. Lunch felt surreal. Sitting at the table where I'd served countless meals, now I was being served by Stephanie. The conversation flowed superficially. Her work, the kids' classes, Chris's new project. No one mentioned the elephant in the room. The fact that this was a permitted visit, not the natural, easy flow of a family relationship. After dessert, my coffee cake, which everyone raved about, Chris took the kids for a quick run at the park, leaving me alone with Stephanie for the first time. The silence hung heavy between us as she washed the dishes and I dried, just like we'd done countless times before. "How are your painting classes going?" she asked finally without looking at me. "They are. It's good to have something to keep me busy." More silence. Then I took a deep breath and decided it was time. "Stephanie, we need to talk about what happened." She stopped washing the dishes, her hands motionless in the soapy water. "Mom, we've already talked about this. It's better this way for everyone." "Better for whom, Stephanie? Because it's certainly not better for your children, who keep asking why I don't come around anymore. And it's not better for me, after I spent years dedicating my life to you all." She turned to me, and I saw her eyes were brimming. "You think this was easy for me? Do you think I don't feel terrible having to limit your visits? Then why did you do it?" She dried her hands on her apron, a familiar gesture so much like my own that I almost smiled. Because things were getting confusing for the kids. They didn't know who to listen to anymore, what rules to follow. One day I'd say one thing, the next you'd do something different. You could have talked to me, set clear boundaries, instead of pushing me away completely. "I tried, Mom. How many times did I talk about bedtimes? About what they ate? About not spoiling them rotten? But you always thought you knew better. Always said you'd done it this way with me and I'd turned out just fine." That hit me. It was true. How many times had I brushed off her suggestions, truly believing my decades of experience outweighed any new parenting theories? "And there's more," she continued, her voice thick with unspent emotion. "Don't you realize how you make me feel when you're always available? Always ready to fix everything? It's like I'm never good enough as a mom." "What? Stephanie, I never thought that." "You don't have to think it. It's implied every time you show up and save the day. Every time the kids run to you with a problem instead of coming to me." I stayed silent, absorbing those stinging words. I'd never seen things from that angle. In my mind, I was just helping, being the best grandma possible. I never realized that, by doing so, I could be inadvertently diminishing my own daughter. I'm so sorry if I made you feel that way, I said finally, the words a raw whisper. That was never my intention. She sighed, running a hand over her tired face. I know, Mom, and I'm also sorry for how I spoke to you that day. It was cruel. You deserved more consideration after everything you've done for us. We stood there, two women separated by a generation but united by our fierce love for the same children, finally beginning to truly see each other's point of view. So, what do we do now? I asked. I don't know exactly, but I think we can start by respecting each other's boundaries. I need to be the mom to my kids, make the main decisions. And you? I need to be more than just the grandma, I completed, a quiet strength entering my voice. I need to rediscover who Barbara is, beyond that. She nodded, a small, genuine smile gracing her lips. The kids loved hearing your painting. Noah said he wants a dinosaur painting for his room. I chuckled, feeling some of the heavy tension dissipate. I'll need a lot more lessons before I can paint convincing dinosaurs. Just then, we heard the front door open, and the kids' excited voices flooded the apartment again. Our conversation was put on hold, but something had shifted. A small, sturdy bridge was beginning to form over the chasm that had opened between us. When it was time to leave, the kids protested, just like always. But this time, instead of promising to be back tomorrow, I had to say we'd see each other soon. When, Grandma? Tomorrow? Noah asked, his little eyes wide with hope. I looked at Stephanie, uncertain. She hesitated for a moment, then said, How about Wednesday? Grandma can come for dinner after her painting class. A wave of relief and gratitude washed over me. It wasn't going back to our old routine, but it was a start. A recognition that I still had a vital place in their lives. Wednesday would be perfect, I replied, smiling warmly at my grandchildren. And who knows, maybe I'll bring my brushes so we can start that unicorn painting. Chloe clapped, utterly thrilled, and even Noah seemed intrigued by the idea of watching me paint. As I stood at the door, ready to leave, Stephanie gave me a hug. The first genuine, unforced hug in weeks. Thanks for the cake, Mom. And thanks for understanding. I'm trying, I answered honestly. It's a process. On the way back home, I felt lighter, as if a significant weight had been partially lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't all resolved, far from it. There were wounds that would need time to fully heal. But there was hope now, a clear path forward. When I got home, instead of sinking into my armchair to ruminate on the day, I went straight to the room where my easel stood. I looked at the sketch of my grandchildren's faces and started adding the first colors. It wasn't perfect. The proportions were still a little off. The colors not quite natural. But there was life there. There was love. As I painted, I remembered another moment, years ago, when Stephanie was still a teenager. I snapped back to the present, realizing there were tears streaming down my face and onto the canvas. Imperfections. Maybe that's what I needed to accept. That there's no such thing as a perfect grandma, just like there's no perfect mom. That all of us are just trying to do the best we can with what we know in the moment. I picked up my phone and, on an impulse, sent a text to Stephanie. Thanks for today. I'm learning how to be a different kind of grandma. Not perfect, but present in the way you all need. Love you. A few minutes later, I got a reply. Love you too, Mom. And the kids are counting down the days until Wednesday. Noah wants to know if you can teach him to paint too. I smiled at my phone, feeling a new wave of warmth spread through me. Maybe this was the beginning of something truly new. Not just for me as Barbara, the woman who paints, but also for me as a grandma. A grandma who respects boundaries, who understands her evolving place, but who still has so much boundless love to give. On Wednesday, I arrived at Stephanie's apartment with my brushes and some small canvases. The kids were absolutely thrilled. They'd already covered the living room table with old newspapers. Ashley was still there, tidying up to leave. Our eyes met briefly, and I sensed she seemed nervous, perhaps worried I'd see her as a rival. I made sure to smile and ask how her day had been. It was great, Mrs. Barbara. Noah learned to tie his shoes today. Really? That's wonderful, I exclaimed, genuinely happy for my grandson's achievement. Once she'd left, Stephanie looked at me with a nod of approval. Small steps, small shifts in attitude. We spent the evening painting, or rather, making a glorious, colorful mess that vaguely resembled painting. Noah decided he wanted to paint a T-Rex eating ice cream, while Chloe insisted on her unicorn flying over a rainbow. I tried to give some basic guidance, but mostly, I just let them revel in the joy of it. Chris arrived home from work and joined us, attempting to paint what he called an abstract family portrait, but which looked more like a joyful explosion of colorful splotches. We laughed so hard my stomach hurt. In a moment when the kids were distracted, deep in a discussion about the exact shades of the rainbow, Stephanie approached me. You know, Mom, I don't think I've ever seen you like this. So light. You were always so worried about doing everything right for them, about being the perfect grandma. I looked at my paint-stained hands, at the happy chaos on the table, at my grandchildren utterly concentrated on their masterpieces. I think I finally understood that I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be present, in the right way, respecting the boundaries. She smiled, placing her hand gently over mine. And I understood that pushing you away wasn't the answer. We just need to find a new balance. That night, when I got back home, I didn't feel the hollow emptiness of the days before. My apartment no longer felt like a museum of past memories, but a vibrant space of possibilities. The next day, I had my painting class. Then I'd meet Brenda and some other friends for coffee. That weekend, Stephanie suggested the kids could have a sleepover at my house. The first time since the banishment. I settled into my favorite armchair, gazing at the painting I'd brought home with me. Noah's masterpiece, with his gleeful ice cream-eating dinosaur. It was far from fine art, but to me, it was perfect in its vibrant imperfection. That's when I realized I was stepping into a new phase of my life. A phase where being a grandma was just one part of who I was, not my entire identity. A phase where I could deeply love my grandkids, but also love myself, rediscover old passions, maybe even find new ones. The ache from that day when I was told I wasn't welcome anymore, it's still there. It'll probably always live in a quiet corner of my heart. But now it shares space with other brighter emotions. Hope, acceptance, even gratitude for this chance at profound rediscovery. Tomorrow I'm going to buy new paints. Vibrant colors to paint not just unicorns and dinosaurs, but new horizons for myself too. Because I've learned that true love, whether it's from a grandma, a mother, or any kind, doesn't diminish anyone. It expands. It creates room. It allows everyone to grow in their own beautiful way. And Barbara, at 67 years old, I'm still growing.